Hello Internet, Shalthis here, and it's time for another episode of ShoutStone. So, if you have been paying any attention to the latest news, you do realize that the first major patch for the Hearthstone beta has launched, and the big beta wipe has occurred. So everybody who's been playing the game thus far has seen their entire statuses been wiped clean. We're starting over fresh. The game, as of this recording, has not come back up, but I do want to go over a few highlights of the patch that has gone into effect and some of the big changes that have gone in. I will have a link to the full patch notes in the description below, so if you want to check it out, just go ahead and click that. But let's talk real quick. So a lot of pretty big changes have happened as a result of this patch. A lot of balance changes, a lot of bug fixes, which I'm not really going to go into, and a lot of just playability increases too. So things that are going to make this game a lot better as it nears open beta, which should be really soon. I would be surprised if the closed beta lasts much longer. Anyway, let's get into business. So one of the first highlights is that they have actually buffed up the amount of gold you can earn in play mode. Now previously you would only earn 5 gold per every 5 wins, which seemed really low based off of the rate at which you could earn gold in other modes. But they have buffed it up to 10 gold per 3 wins. So a substantial buff to that, and going to make life a lot easier to actually earn gold if you're playing in play mode, which would be ranked mode, unranked mode, anything like that. You can also earn XP in any mode now, up to max level. So you can play practice, and they have buffed the max level up to level 60 for your heroes. And as you know, every few levels or so you can unlock gold cards and things like that. But now you can do it all in practice if you really want to. But you can also earn it in arena mode and play mode and all that sort of stuff as well. They have renamed spell power. Instead of calling it spell power, they're just calling it spell damage, which I think is a pretty good thing. It does kind of clarify what it's referring to, and that it just really affects damage. Actually, it does affect healing, though, doesn't it? Interesting. Well, either way, they have renamed it spell damage. So maybe it won't affect healing spells anymore? I guess we'll have to see. They don't mention specifically that, but it'll be interesting to see when the game goes back live how it all kind of plays out. They have also reduced the duration of the animation effects for secrets and fatigue, which is really good because I know a lot of people have complained that if they took a lot of time planning their move because their opponent had a secret in play, when they triggered it, it would run down the timer on the rest of their moves so they couldn't do anything else. So hopefully by speeding up that animation, it's going to make life a lot easier. A lot of the daily quests where you have to win a certain amount of games with a specific class have been tweaked so that you have a choice between 2 classes. So it's not perfect, but it's certainly better than being forced into a specific class that you may not really enjoy playing, or just plain may not be very good at playing, which is like a lot of us. You know, there's just some classes that it's difficult to play. They have finally added a button to the UI for crafting mode. So instead of having to kind of hunt for it in the card collection book, there is an actual button that leads to it right now, which I think is, you know, about time. And I mean, you can kind of check out how that's been redesigned a little bit. But let's get into some of the cards that have been tweaked and adjusted. One of the first cards here, Sun Fury Protector, which used to give taunt to every other minion on the field, now only gives taunt to adjacent minions. So once again, this comes down to being able to strategically place your cards on the table and not just throw them out wildly. You have to make sure you can tweak, you know, set everything the right way, so when you do a combination like this, like if you set up minions in a certain way and you want to play Sun Fury Protector to get some powerful taunt minions, you got to put it down in the right place. So, interesting buff there, or interesting nerf there, I guess. Another really interesting change, Twilight Drake, which used to be a 4/4 minion that would gain, I'm sorry, it was a 1/1 minion that would gain +1/+1 for every other card in your hand, now is a 4/1 minion that only gains +1 HP per card in your hand. So it cannot go over 4 attack, but it can have a lot of health depending on the cards in your hand, which is a huge nerf to Twilight Drake, and a big change. So that the way that card is used has just changed entirely, and it is no longer can be used the way it has been. It's basically going to be really useful, almost as a taunt battery if you can buff it with taunt. and get it really, stacked with health, then that can be useful. And of course, there's other cards that some decks may have that can, like what am I thinking of here? I think Inner Fire that equals health and damage together, so you can still make it a pretty powerful card. But a really interesting change for Twilight Drake. Frostwolf Warlord, which was a card that would gain +1/+1 for every other minion that was on the field, and it would scale depending on if minions lived or died, is now actually just a battle cry instead of a passive ongoing effect. Which means if you play it with 3 other minions on the field, it'll get +3/+3, and it doesn't change. So that's both good and bad. That means you don't want to play it too early and not have it get enough strength, but it's also good because it won't just lose its power based off of the other minions that die. So it can be really, really useful in decks that produce a lot of cheap expendable minions to get a nice, powerful card out there that can't be, negated based off of the death of those cheap minions. So that's pretty handy. Mirror Image, a mage ability, has been changed so that instead of creating 2 0/1 minions, it creates 2 0/2 minions. And those minions will generally have taunt, and that means that is going to be a huge pain to deal with, even more so than it already is. So that's going to be a real fun treat. The Priest card Fade has been replaced with a new card called Shadow Word Death, which is a 3-drop. It destroys a minion with an attack of 5 or more. So it's kind of like Big Game Hunter, but it's a little more useful, I think. It is class specific, obviously, but I think it's a little more useful. And it's got a really good drop cost, so that could be a very powerful card in the mid to late game, depending on what you're facing on the other side of the table. Greater Heal has also been replaced with a card called Holy Fire, which is a 6-drop that deals 5 damage, and it restores 5 HP to the hero. So that's a pretty strong card, and good for the mid to late game as well, when you're starting to take damage and you need to either deal damage to the opposing hero or take out some minions that are causing you trouble. But it is very expensive, but it's pretty well balanced for what it does, I'd say. Sacrificial Pact has been nerfed, or buffed, I should say. It's now only going to cost 0 mana, and that is the Warlock ability that allows you to destroy a demon. So it is now cheaper to play that card and makes it a little more useful. Now I want to get onto some of the rogue changes. I wanted to highlight most of these changes because this was a big deal that they were nerfing rogues or that they were, reducing their power. So let's get into that. Backstab will now deal 2 damage to an undamaged minion only. So that means you can't use it to finish off a really powerful minion, but you can use it on cheaper minions and to at least deal some initial damage. So it's going to take a little more strategic thinking before you play Backstab to make sure you time it right, and you're not including it in combo or something like that in which it can't really be used. Shiv now costs 2 mana, up from 1. And that was a card that deals 1 damage and lets you draw a card. I think that was a pretty necessary buff. 1 damage and drawing a card for 1 mana is pretty strong. Defias Ringleader, which was one of the big sticking points, has been reduced by 1 HP. So will that help fix the balance that was been thrown out of whack by that card? Quite possibly. 1 HP is a really big deal in a game like this. Conceal now costs 1 mana, up from 0. Headcrack, which is a staple of many rogue decks, is now going to cost you 3 mana to play, up from 2, but the effect will remain the same. That's a pretty big deal, because Headcrack is, like I said, it's a staple of rogue decks because you can just combo it completely and forever use it, and that is going to help you against rogues, really, because they're not going to be able to just play really expensive cards all the time and be able to Headcrack because it's been had that cost increase. So, pretty useful there. A big change to the rogue hero power. It can no longer buff currently equipped weapons. So that's a really sizable change there. And finally, Edwin Van Cleef has been changed to a 2/2 minion, but he no longer has stealth. And of course he still has his passive ability, his passive combo ability and all that. But pretty major changes to the rogue deck, and certainly something to keep in mind. Another big change that happened to Shaman decks, the Frog that you are hexed into by a shaman, the shaman ability Hex, to be perfectly honest, is now classed as a beast. Now that's really important, especially for hunter decks that have a lot of abilities that increase the benefit of beasts. So it's really useful all around, but it should justifiably have been a beast always, but a good move to make. And lastly, the most important patch note, chat has been rejiggered. So there you have it. Those are the highlights from these patch notes. Again, I have a link to all of these patch notes in the description below, so you can check them out yourself. And you can see how your class has been changed. There's been a bunch of minor changes as well, but I didn't want to cover everything because it's already been 11 minutes. So go check it out. But thanks a lot for watching. I'll be back tomorrow with more Hearthstone action, as always. And you can find me on Facebook and Twitter. Links are in the description. Make sure you subscribe if you want to get daily Hearthstone updates. Leave a comment, like this video, all that good stuff. And thanks so much for watching. I will see you all next time.